And there we are, live on YouTube. Dana Banana, this mic is all yours.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everybody. And yeah, I had noticed that today is that Lionsgate peak portal or whatever it is. I will admit, I really don't know very much about that. And but I've heard people talking about manifesting and how, I guess it's a good day to do stuff like that. And at one point when I thought about it, it was kind of like there would have been a time I would have thought, oh, what would I want to manifest? And every little simple list of things that I would want to manifest would grow longer and longer and longer because it would never be enough. And what I have realized now is that there's really only one thing to want, and that is I want to know God. I want to know myself as God created me, and there would be nothing else to want. But I can see how there would be the temptation uh, to to want to manifest things. It was a trap that I had felt myself kind of sitting in for a long, long time. And I think that that was all there once I started to do some inquiry. I think that was all there to keep me small, right? I want these things, yet I can't have them. The world is so big, the world is so vast and filled with so many things. And but I appear to just not be deserving of any of it. And I did some inquiry on that this week. And what it wound up all coming down to, I believe, or at least in this particular session of inquiry, um, it turns out I am afraid of big. I am afraid of being quote unquote big. I'm afraid of being out there. I'm afraid of being seen, heard, and noticed. Yet at the same time, I spent years wanting to be seen, heard, and noticed. And it's like, how crazy is that, to realize that you've got this tug of war going on in your mind constantly, and how could you possibly go anywhere? How could you not continue to be stuck when there's a total tug of war going on in the back of your mind with two completely opposing ideas of what one would want? As it turns out, along with this self inquiry, what I was actually afraid of was the ego's version of big. So the ego's version of big would be, oh, people hear me, people see me, and therefore people can judge me. And then if they see me long enough and hear me long enough, they'll see just how inadequate I actually am, right? They'll see this imposter pretending to be spiritual or trying to fit in or whatever. And these are just, you don't realize, or at least I did not realize how much of this stuff was back there until I was able to take a step back and just constantly do all of this looking and all of this inquiry, right? But that fear of being seen, that fear of being heard, all comes from judgment, and it all comes from the belief in judgment and that I'm deserving of judgment. And the reason I would feel I'm deserving of judgment is because I judge other people the same way I would be afraid of them judging me. And you can see how insane and crazy and cyclical this is, right? It just constantly loops. But this goes on in the back of the mind, running and running and running and running on autopilot, and you never look at it, and it's just one constant reaction after another, and it's insane. And once you finally look at it, which I was able to do this just this week, it was like, no wonder. No wonder I've always felt stuck. No wonder I've never really been able to do anything. I've always been able to start projects, get pretty good at them with little effort, and then something would come along and kind of, I don't know, just deter me, distract me. It could be any number of things. And for the longest time, I had felt like I'm just not meant to do anything or go anywhere. It's like as soon as things get difficult or tough or the obstacles start showing up and I can't get past them, it's like there's always something that will stop me from going further. And as it turns out, that was me. That's in Dana's personal code, right? Dana's personal code is she can do a little and she can do a lot with that little, but there's no more that she can do with that because if 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 she does, she's going to be seen. She's going to be judged. And who is she really afraid of judging her? God. If I am seen, right? If I am seen, if I am out there, and if I am scrutinized, that is proof that I deserve that punishment that up until becoming a course student, I did not realize was there. So that fear of punishment, that fear of I've taken something that's not mine, right? If I'm going to talk, if I'm going to express myself, if I'm going to be out there and be seen, then there are going to be all kinds of consequences because I have taken on a role that I don't deserve. And that is the role of speaking for God, right? The role of being a person when I am not supposed to be a person, right? I've taken what doesn't belong to me. And now, if I am seen with it, I'm going to get the punishment I deserve. So, just a few things of that I had noticed just within this last week, which was very, very interesting. The good news is as it turns out, I do not have to be afraid of being big because big in the ego's terms is not a thing, right? So I was afraid of what big looked like in ego's terms. But what it really is, and what I am so thankful to realize is that I can be big and still live a very quiet, simple, humble life. That bigness that, as it turns out, that I'm looking for is not to be seen, it's not to be noticed, it's not to be heard. It's beingness with the capital B. That is all I want. So that is big. That is the right kind of big. That is the only kind of big. That is I'm forgetting the word. Oh, the grandeur of God versus the grandiosity of the ego. As it turns out, yes, I was super scared of the grandiosity of the ego and buying into that. But it's the grandeur of God that is so perfect and so beautiful and can be so quiet. And that, as it turns out, I don't have to be afraid of. I could say, however, I don't have to be afraid of that. But I guess as it turns out, I kind of still am. And the reason that I say that is because, and I'm going to read this. This is in chapter 13, section 3 in the text. You may wonder why it is so crucial that you look upon your hatred and realize its full extent. You may also think that it would be easy enough for the Holy Spirit to show it to you and to dispel it without the need for you to raise it to awareness yourself. Yet there is one more obstacle you have interposed between yourself and the atonement. We have said that no one will countenance fear if he recognizes it. Yet in your disordered state of mind, you are not afraid of fear. You do not like it, but it is not your desire to attack that. It is not your desire to attack that really frightens you. You are not seriously disturbed by your hostility. You keep it hidden because you're more afraid of what it covers. You could even look upon the ego's darkest cornerstone without fear if you did not believe that, without the ego, you would find within yourself something you fear even more. You are not afraid. You are not really afraid of crucifixion. Your real terror is of redemption. Under the ego's dark foundation is the memory of God, and it is of this that you are really afraid. For this memory would instantly restore you to your proper place, and it is this place that you have sought to leave. Your fear of attack is nothing compared to your fear of love. You would be willing to look even upon your savage wish to kill God's Son if you did not believe that it saves you from love. For this wish caused the separation, and you have protected it because you do not want the separation healed. You realize that by removing the dark cloud that obscures it, your love for your Father would impel you to answer his call and leap into heaven. You believe that attack is salvation because it would prevent you from this. For still, deeper than the ego's foundation, and much stronger than it will ever be, is your intense and burning love for God and his for you. This is what you really want to hide. And so, I guess for me, unless I'm just completely jumbling this entire thing up, my fear of bigness is really my fear of God. But the bigness was disguised in the ego's grandiosity, which is filled, that they're all symbols of judgment and being found with something that doesn't belong to me, of being ridiculed, of being just all kinds of terrible things, right? And it's underneath all of it, I have used this story and this thought system to hide from God. This is like that second shield of oblivion. The world and all of its judgments and all of its stories and all of its everything there to keep me from really going into the mind and asking that question that the Course challenges us to ask. I don't remember exactly where it is, but what if I looked within and saw no sin? So this is just a little something that I had noticed this week. And I do notice a couple of things in the chat here. Let me see. Audrey, I am glad you love my profile pic. And let me see, Karen, what I want to manifest is similar, Dana. My only goal in this world is to listen to God's voice more clearly and consistently. It is possible, even in this world, to listen to only one voice. It takes effort and great willingness to learn. Yes, absolutely. Um, it takes so much willingness. And just like when I had mentioned, with the little story this morning over oh, why wasn't I invited to this get together? And it's like, the truth is I wouldn't have cared about being invited to it. I'm not into social stuff. I barely make online stuff at this point. There's maybe just a couple per week that I even show up, and most of the time I don't even talk. So there's no part of me that has any interest in being social right now. And it is what it is. For a little while, I kind of judged it. Now I'm just looking at it as this is probably just the rest and respite that I deserve. I might spend the rest of my life in this place, but it's not for me to judge because I have no idea what it is. But in all of that, it wasn't about whether or not I was going to be invited to this thing. It was that part of me back there that was like, wait, what about me? Don't I exist? Right? Don't I count for something? Am I invisible? I mean, what is this? That thing back there that has to be unfairly treated. If I'm not unfairly treated, then I wouldn't have anything to complain about, right? And I've noticed this need to complain ever since becoming a course student. I have noticed this need to complain, this need to blame, this need to point the finger, this need to be unfairly treated. And this was just another wonderful example of it. And I think with that willingness that you mentioned, Karen, when you do this over and over and over again, at least this is what I have noticed. I had heard Regina in one of her many wonderful talks talk about how beliefs can start to, I guess I'm just going to paraphrase, sort of revert back into thoughts once the charge has been lessened, right? So in one of her talks, she's talking, difference between beliefs and thoughts. So a thought is just a thought. It's like a suggestion, right? A belief is that investment that we put into it. So it's sort of like the thought, I guess, is sort of like a dead battery. It's just there, right? But if you put that battery in the charger and you juice it up, then it becomes a belief. So there would have been a time, if it hadn't been for this course, if it hadn't been for practicing this, if it hadn't been for the shadow work, for letting all of that darkness up, this morning, that story would have gone on unnoticed, meaning not looked at. I would have just believed that second shield of oblivion, right? It's the story's fault, right? It's, oh my God, is she even a friend of mine? Can I, what is this going on? Why wasn't I included in this whole thing? I mean, it's so ridiculous. But I realized this morning, oh, I'm noticing that there's a trigger aspect in all of this that's kind of there. It's enough to get my attention and to notice it. But I don't really believe it anymore. Like, I get what this is about now. I understand what the stories are meant to do. They're meant to be plugged in, right? They're meant to be charged up. They're meant to be given juice. And I just didn't have the juice to give it because at this point, I think it's starting to go from a belief into a thought, right? It got my attention. It wanted the charge, but I just didn't feel like giving it to it because at this point I recognize what it is. And that, if there's nothing else to be grateful for, I am so very, very grateful for that. Um, so yeah, that little bit of willingness is everything. And it is so helpful to just let it all just be there, right? Just like what Glor I'm sorry, I'm gonna totally butcher her name, and I looked at her name for the last hour. Glory, I think it was Gloria Jean, Gloria something. I'm sorry. But just like she kept saying, just that lesson, let all things be exactly as they are. That has been one of those course go-to phrases that, they all come up when they're supposed to, when they're going to be most helpful. And this is one that has come up so very often for me recently, and it works, right? It works. That's the thing that gets that tornado going on in the back of the mind out in front of you so that you can actually look at it. So Lynn had said, big time, I'm on my way, I'm making it. Peter Gabriel. Yeah, I love that song, actually. It's such a good song. I have a feeling you and I probably have a lot of similar taste in music. So just trying to think like what else has come up this week. It's just been so much of that, looking at thoughts. And they're constantly coming up to be looked at. Like, there's just no getting away from those. Back to that part in the text. I wanted to address, you may wonder why it is so crucial that you look upon your hatred and realize its full extent. Kind of like those ghosts in The Sixth Sense. For me personally, the hatred was one of my ghosts, right? I hate to even admit this out loud, but I'm just totally going to do it because I'm just going to put it out there. But until I recognized like what was actually happening, I would have been able to hang out in my mind, replaying events that had gone by, fights maybe that I had had with people, or ways that they had supposedly mistreated me or done me wrong in some way, shape, or form. I could even think about politicians, celebrities, and all of these other public figures that I had had some kind of a gripe against for some reason or another. And it wasn't really until now it's easy to kind of believe in the whole, this person who was actually in my life did me wrong, therefore I feel some hatred there. But when you start like, but what about these other people? Like, I've never even met them. I don't know anything about them. I've never interacted with them. I don't even know how I would feel in their presence. And once I started to look at that, it was kind of like, what is really going on here? Right? All of this condemnation in my mind, what is this? And it really wasn't until I started to realize that it's my job as an ego to like hate people, right? It's my job as an ego. This is, thinking that that's exactly what I was, this limited little person with her past and her history and little traumas and this and that and the other. Felt like that was my right, that was my job. And stepping back from it, it's like, no, 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 it's that program that's in place. And unquestioned, it'll just keep running and running and running and running. But once I finally took a look at it and realized this isn't toward one person or one specific thing, no matter what it is, this is abstract. This is toward anything and everything. This is just part of what's in the code. Until I was able to do that, I couldn't see what it was and I couldn't see what it was for. And now it's just one of those things I can catch it as it starts to come up and I can look at it and go, of course that's there. It's supposed to be there. That it's just doing its job. And to realize that is not me. And to practice like what Regina was talking about, you simply look at the code and you realize what it is, what it's doing, and what it is for. And you just say, no, this is not in alignment with what my purpose is at this point. And that is that creative mind that is kind of editing the code and sending that back out into the one mind. And I can see how it would be like truly helpful, holy, sacred work, but it is very, very painful to do it. So let me see. Anything else in the chat? No. Karen.
Thanks, Dana. I love the way you explain the thoughts in reference to the difference between thoughts and beliefs, how the thought was a dead battery and the belief was the battery juiced up. I love that. That was great. And yeah, the beliefs are what we really are undoing here, right? Um, and I also, when you said about the ego's job is to hate, it just made me realize and recognize that, the hatred, just like this redemption, the redemption it's coming from me. It's my decision. It's my decision. Everything is a decision here. And it's a fear of love. Everything is either fear or love, but this fear that he's talking about here is the fear of love. Fear of attack is nothing compared to your fear of love. And that's what we're afraid of. We're actually afraid of the light. Marianne Williamson has that beautiful quote that we're not afraid of our darkness, we're afraid of the light. And we don't want to shine. We, like you said, you play small, and we're learning that that is the ego wanting to keep us down. But what came to me when you're talking about the ego's job is to hate is the ego doesn't really hate anyone or anything because there is nothing out there and there is no people, there is no world. The world is, there is no world outside of our mind. So we are hating ourselves and projecting it out onto the world. So for me, that's really important to remember. And I know that's what you meant. I just wanted to clarify it in words because it's never the thing out there. And that is something that I've learned. It took me a while to get there. And it's so true. And it's so helpful because it's the only responsibility we have is to accept the atonement for ourselves. So yeah, I love everything you're sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that, because yeah, that is true. The hate is, for me personally, it's actually just the belief in hate, right? It's and it's that filter. It's that filter that kind of colors everything that you look at, right? So it's like, for me, it had gotten to this place where it was like all I could do was sort of recognize it in all kinds of things that I looked at. And I didn't recognize until, I don't know when, sometime maybe within the last year, I would say, or since becoming a course student. But no, it's not any one specific thing. This is abstract, and it's really just the filter. And through listening to different people, like, again, for me, Regina Dawn Akers is just one of the greatest teachers. I love listening to her stuff. Um, and it was, a lot of her talking about stuff like that, just kind of recognizing this code, recognizing, the beliefs versus the thoughts. That whole thing, I watched this, it wasn't a good movie, but I watched it nonetheless. It kind of goes to show even the not so great movies can show you something sometimes. There was this movie, it came out back in 2012, and it was called Branded. And it had to do with like the advertising and the marketing agencies and stuff. And the whole thing was, if again, I haven't watched this movie in like 10 years, and I only watched it the one time, but as I'm recalling it now, it seemed to have been about, in advertising, the fast food industry was losing revenue because people weren't wanting to eat that kind of food, because the body image that was being promoted at the time was, slim, fit, healthy, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. And that was not going to be good for the fast food industry. So I think it was maybe one of these fast food companies had hired this marketing agency, and what they decided to do was try to reprogram public perception. And so, instead of maybe changing their menu and trying to offer out healthy options, instead what they did was they started like filming ads promoting like big is beautiful, right? Now I'm saying all of this stuff, I don't have a personal opinion at this point about body image and which is beautiful and which isn't beautiful, because I've already spent time in the health and fitness industry. I've already been extremely overweight, and I've also been extremely fit. So at this point, I've tried on all of those costumes and I'm done with it, and it all means the same thing, which is nothing. But in this movie, because this is what they're trying to promote, their whole idea was to, again, program the audience. And there was this scene, and I'd have to go back and look at it, but what I remember from it is there was like a little animation of sorts going on where they're showing a person watching this advertisement, and there's like a little battery at the back of their head, like the base of their skull, right? And it shows like the battery getting charged by this person's investment in the advertisement that they're watching, right? So it was just a perfect visual symbol of charging a belief, charging some kind of concept that needs to be part of your mo, so to speak. And when I saw that, it was just like, wow, it's such a shitty movie, you know but such a potent message. And every single time that we allow a belief or a feeling, they'll show up, yeah, advertising manipulation, exactly, Karen. And that's their job too. I had spent many, many years even, kind of condemning the advertisers and all of this and that. And now I kind of just look at it. It's like, no, that's what the ego, that's part of this thought system, of course. Who put the advertisements out there? We did, right? It's perfect. It's exactly perfect as it is. But, just in kind of recognizing all of that, what am I thinking? What am I buying into? what am I, what part of my past, is still part of my present that I'm continuing to feed. And every single time that I look at stuff like that, I have that little visualization of that battery in the back of my mind getting charged. And that's what it runs on. Um, so anyway, that was just something else to mention. And I'm just also going to be upfront and tell you guys if it seems like I'm humming and hawing, it's because I am a little bit. I figured I would wing it today, and so I'm not well prepared. But are you guys up for a little bit more reading?
Absolutely. Yeah, please. And I was just going to say something. We started out talking about the idea of manifesting and remembering that Jesus tells us in the Course of Miracles that we are manifesting this world. We're constantly, what we see is what we want to see. And it may not seem like that to us because we can't imagine that we really want to see this. But when I look at my own thinking, I recognize that, yeah, a big part of my wants and desires have to do with, the basically being right and seeing other people as being out to get me. So I mean that's kind of how the ego works. So that's the world that we see is a world that is just filled that in which we are manifesting unfairness everywhere we look. Uh, and that's because we're experiencing our belief that God is unfair and that we have been unfairly treated. And there's a lot of things going on there. But we are manifesting the world that we see. And when we shift our mind, the world we see will change. That was what we were just reading in Joel Goldsmith. Or was it Joel Goldsmith? Yeah, that's what we were just reading in Joel Goldsmith was that the world I see is actually a reflection of my own thinking. So when I change my thinking, the world there will be nothing unpleasant in the world because my thoughts are pleasant. I'm seeing things through the eyes of the Holy Spirit, and that's a different way of seeing, but it actually is manifesting the world I see. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in there, and thanks, Danny. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Lynn. And yeah, I appreciate everything that you just said. And it reminded me of that line in the course. I think it's the secret. I don't know where it is, but the secret to salvation is this: you're doing this unto yourself. And I think it's in chapter 27, where it talks about, I'm getting exactly what I wanted, right? Everything that I'm getting is exactly as I wanted it to be. And talk about completely dismantling the victim-based mentality, right? It wasn't really until I started to look at that and I had to ask the question, like, well, why do I want this? Right? Just asking the question, if this is true, then why do I want this? Is enough of that gap in between me and the story to be able to look at the story as a story, and it is actually giving me exactly what I wanted. Um, I just don't remember wanting it. Kind of like I think several weeks ago when I said it's sort of like you go into a restaurant, you order something, and some time goes by, or maybe you place your order in advance, right? And along the way, you get to the restaurant, you realize, no, this isn't what I want. But it comes out because you did order it, and it's like, you know what? I've changed my mind. And it's really just as simple as that. But that doesn't mean I didn't order it. And it doesn't mean that the kitchen made a mistake. It just means I wanted this and now I know a little better. Maybe I looked at the ingredient list. Maybe I decided I wanted something else, but it's like, no, I just don't really want this anymore. So I can see by allowing all things to be as they are, and by allowing the thoughts, the beliefs, the hurts, all of this that need to condemn. Oh my goodness. I completely understand why, why I might have an autoimmune disease kind of running through the body. I'm looking through all of the unconscious self attack that has been going on. That doesn't mean that I deserve the autoimmune disease or that anybody deserves the autoimmune disease if they have one. It just means it's a symbol of unconscious self attack. And for me, I had no idea that this stuff was going on until I finally took a step back and looked. And it's like, if I'm just willing to let this be here and know that I have invited the Holy Spirit in to look at this stuff with me. And of course I've been mistaken. I'm using an insane thought system. There's nothing but error here. I expect it. I expect it to hurt and be painful and be traumatizing and to make me feel like the worst person in the world and to make other people look like the worst people in the world, because that's the belief in the mind. So taking that step back, taking a look at it, if I were to have any questions of, oh, why did I manifest this? Why did I manifest that? It's like, well, I didn't know I was manifesting all of these things in my life. I thought I was just a poor victim of it. But now I can see there's all this attack there. Okay, can I let it be here? Can I be willing to let it go? Can I let it be exactly as it is and just know I was mistaken, right? I was just believing an insane thought system. Now that I know better, I can simply choose again. Yes, I do have that willingness and not even need the picture to change. Like what Karen was saying before, it's not about changing the condition of the body. Can she learn to be at peace regardless of the condition of the body? And that's really what it is. That's what true freedom is. That's what true peace is. Karen.
Amen. That is true peace. And what you just shared was beautiful. And it reminds me of what Ken Wapnick said a long time ago that helped me so much. The lesson, truth will correct all errors in my mind. And then he added, not my body. Truth will correct all errors in my mind, not my body. We are not here to heal the body. We are here to heal the mind. So, you know, it's beautiful and great if the body heals, but the goal is to heal the mind. And once the mind is healed and we are at peace with whatever the body is going through, we're healed. That's the healing. Health is inner peace. What I loved what you shared about, inviting and welcoming the autoimmune disease, welcoming, and you mentioned earlier about even talking to it. And I asked my pain. I mean, I have chronic pain. I have so much going on that it's sometimes overwhelming, very overwhelming. And what are you trying to teach me? What do you want to tell me? And
Mhm.
I always come up with the same answer. And this has been going on for years. The same answer comes up, that you are not this body. You are not this body. And it brings me to just recognizing that the power of decision is my own. That's where the power is. And I can, like you said, I can change my mind. And it is so powerful. And what you said too about the secret of salvation is actually one of the best lines in the course, because it doesn't stop there. He says, the secret of salvation is but this, that you are doing this unto yourself, no matter what the form of attack. This is still true. Whoever takes the role of enemy and of attacker, still is this true. Whatever seems to be the cause of any pain and suffering you feel, this is still true. For you would not react at all to figures in a dream you knew that you were dreaming. Let them be as hateful and as vicious as they may. They could have no effect on you unless you failed to recognize it is your dream. I just, that is so powerful. I mean, this is saying, yeah, this is what's happening. This is what's up. And, you could blame all you want. You could do anything you want, say anything you want, but you are doing this to yourself. I am responsible for what I see. This takes us back to responsibility for sight. I choose the feelings I experience and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Doesn't stop there. He says, deceive yourself no longer, that you are helpless in the face of what is done to you. Acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, as you said, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. This is forgiveness. This is all. This course is so holographic. He tells us in what is forgiveness. You thought, you thought that you were, how does he say it? That you thought it was because of what your brother did to you. My mind is going blank right now, but it's not what your brother did to you. Your brother didn't do anything to you. And to me, these are such great reminders, because when the ego strikes, and I like what Brooklyn says, sneaky Pete. I say sneaky Pete strikes again. When sneaky Pete strikes, it's not easy sometimes when you're in the thick of it. I'm just quickly going to read because my mind went blank, and I know we all know this. And I just actually shared about this yesterday. I shared on this, what is forgiveness, yesterday. Here it is. Forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. This all goes together. I am doing this to myself. I am responsible for what I see. This is all the forgiveness. We're taking responsibility. We're recognizing the cause is in the mind. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. There is something, I wanted to use the word empowering. That was what came up, but I don't think that's actually what I mean. I think what I mean is relief. There is such a relief when you step back and you realize, no, this is not a mistake. I'm getting what I ordered. I just don't remember ordering it. And I guess that's where the empowerment thing kind of comes from, even though that's not really what I'm trying to accomplish or anything, but there can be something, I guess, empowering in the whole idea of, this is actually up to me, and it's really just about a choice, and it really just comes down to one choice, right? We supposedly have free will, but no, we've got one choice. This is our free will. Do I want to see this as I've set it up, or do I want to see this as the truth with a capital T? And also, like with what Regina had taught in one of her other talks, about it really comes down to, it was just a paraphrase, a different way of phrasing it. It really just comes down to willingness versus resistance, right? Am I going to sit here and fight with everything that comes up? Or am I just going to be willing to allow it to all just be there, even if do not know what it is, do not know what it's for? I went through a period where the only forgiveness practice I did for a little while was to just allow whatever it was that came up and just say, it was like an inner shrug, it was like, I don't know. Yeah, to this thing, I don't know. To that thing, I don't know. I don't know what this is. I don't know what it's for. And that constant repetition of that, but it was sincere though. It wasn't me just trying to do it. It was a very sincere, I know how this seems to make me feel. I know how this looks to me, but I really don't know what this is. Um, and a perfect example, because when it comes to thinking that we know what something is and what it is for, I was, again, as far as a television show or whatever, I'm watching something the other day, and it was like a whole scene took place, and then another character came in and only caught like the tail end of whatever it was that had just gone on for, like, I don't know, a minute or two. And it was just that part of the scene that she happened to walk into, that where she thought she got like a whole story of what was actually going on, and she kind of took that and ran with it. And it's like, how often do we only see a small part of a story, and think that we know what it is and think that we know what it's for? We've seen it on videos. Sometimes somebody comes up, they'll take a video. In fact, I saw one, I don't know, several years ago. Somebody had taken a video with their phone of, it was like two people fighting, and the scene that they got gave one depiction of what was happening. But apparently, there was a whole scene that took place beforehand that completely changed the context. So it's like, how often do we just look at something at face value, think that we know what it is, what it's for, come up with a whole judgment about it? Actually, the judgment just appears as it's something else. I've noticed the judgments are just there; they're ready to attack. It's always after the fact that we're looking, right? That's the hard part. But it's just proof of, it's even in form, it's even in shows and movies. We walk in on a scene, there's been a whole scene already that had taken place. We walk in at the tail end of it and we think we know what everything is, and we don't know anything. And we'll take that, we run with it, and then I guess is kind of like with the code, you just feed more into the code and you're putting that back into the one mind when you have absolutely no idea what anything is or what you've even just looked at. And as far as the body, I mean, just I had had issues with food for a good portion of my life. I would say really until I was somewhere in my 30s. And I had multiple eating disorders when I was in high school. I had gotten up to like over 200 pounds at one point. And then through a series of different small little epiphanies and understandings, and then going into like personal training school and stuff, I was able to get into like the best shape ever, right? And I thought that if I had just, I don't know, changed the careers, whipped the body into shape, was able to go into any store, put anything on, stand in any position, and look really good in it, that somehow I would be happier, right? I would maybe feel less socially anxious, that there would be less things for someone to pick apart in me. And what I realized is that may have quelled the body image issues, but there was absolutely no more peace in being fit and in shape and being able to wear whatever I want than there was even being heavy, because there was always something there to take its place. So, as far as like the whole body image thing, it's like I went from being fat, you know, to at that time, because for my frame, that's how I looked and that's how I felt, right? So I went from being that and thinking that was the problem to that was no longer the problem, but now all of these other things came up to take its place. There was absolutely no way to fix one type of form anywhere and somehow think that that was going to result in peace. So it was just an interesting observation that it's this thing that I had put up on a pedestal for so long, which was having a thin, fit body that could wear whatever it wanted to, and being in shape and having some kind of a title behind my name, or a certification or something behind my name, how it didn't make me any more peaceful. And in fact, what it did, the stuff that came up in its place was more of the deeper crap of, oh, as it turns out, these feelings of inadequacy have absolutely nothing to do with the body. These run deeper, and I don't even know what they're about. So it's just like I said, it's just interesting to see what we can use, to give some kind of an explanation for our feelings of inadequacy and thinking that we know what a problem is when we don't have any idea. And as it turns out, for me personally, the problem is, and I just heard this term the other day, but it pretty much sums it up, ontological guilt, right? That would be the problem. The problem is ontological guilt, the belief that my overall existence is the problem, right? And when that is your problem, and that is the problem, that's when you see it in every single symbol that could possibly cross your path. So it was just an eye-opening sort of experience for me, and something I'm very, very thankful to be able to see. Yes, Karen.
Wow, that is a really great example, and what an amazing experience, for you. I really, and it's so interesting because it really reminds us that it doesn't matter what we do to this body or what this body is going through or how it looks. If we are not at peace, it doesn't mean anything. We're still seeking outside of ourselves, thinking that that is going to make us happy. And as you basically said too, we don't know our own best interests. We don't know what anything is for, but I still give you a lot of credit for what you did going through those changes and even trying to see, that experience was a learning experience for you. And you learned the lesson that you came here to learn. You learned that even though you went through those two experiences, neither one is what makes you happy. The only thing that makes us happy is the decision to be happy. It is everything here is a decision. I love this line in the course. I got it memorized now. It's like all my go-to. It's like you are deprived of nothing except by your own decisions and then decide otherwise. That's from the Course in Miracles, and that's talking about depression, but you can fill in the blank. There's nothing outside of the mind that can, it might temporarily make us happy. You may have temporarily felt happy because you lost weight and you were fit and you could fit into clothes better or whatever. But we have the same issues, the same problems. And if the mind is not healed, they're going to keep showing up. So I love that example. It was a great example. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah. And let me just clarify, like that best shape of my life, that was like, you know, 10 to 12 years ago. Right. Well, like 12 to 15 years ago, actually. I'm certainly not in that shape now. And what was interesting is it just brought up even more forgiveness opportunities and more looking into this whole, well, first I was this thing I judged as bad and I felt bad. Then I was this thing as I judged as good and I still felt bad. And now I am no longer the thing that I've judged as good or bad. I'm somewhere in the middle, but because I had gotten good and now I'm not in that good place, oh, that feels bad too. And it's just an interesting way that the mind can kind of screw with us, or that we can just get lost in all of this, I don't know, egoic false thinking. And at one point, oh, and then of course, the stories about the diet. Oh, well, I was in better shape and I was thinner and I was able to keep weight off a little bit better when I didn't eat gluten, right? And I had given up gluten for a couple of years and then got sick of it. But not that there was anything wrong with it, it just wasn't for me anymore. And when I had put, a little bit of weight back on after supposedly eating the gluten, and it was like, can I live with this? It really all just came down to I'm just being given an opportunity to look at this belief that I have in what my body should or shouldn't look like and just welcome it in. So, you know what? Okay, I started eating gluten again. I don't work out the way I used to. The body is not in that shape anymore. Can I let this be here? Right? Can I welcome this in? Because I finally had recognized that all of that work that I had put into trying to build this perfect body, and trust me, it took years, right? That was like no small feat. That took a type of motivation that I don't even know where it came from. But I certainly don't have it now. And to try to get back into that shape, it would take a level of work and motivation and all of this stuff that I certainly don't have right now because it's really just not that important to me. But can I let the condition of this body that I have now, can I just let it be here? Right? Can I welcome this in? Can I let it be exactly as it is? And in fact, can I even look at the need to become involved in the health and fitness training because otherwise I would be too lazy to do it. So I got to make a career out of it somehow, or at least, adopt the title of it so that I would have to do it and then notice that also that didn't work. You know, the laziness and the non-motivation and stuff came back, which just basically showed me that no matter how much I try to fight a concept or fight something that I don't like, what's underneath it all is always going to come back up, right? Everything I could ever possibly do to try to fix a perceived problem always, always came back up. That surface fix would go away somehow. Either it was the motivation or things would change or what have you. It was always what was underneath it. And what was underneath all of that was, I believe I'm a body. I believe that this is my value and my worth. And that if I don't have this, then I'm nothing. Right. So just allowing all of that to be there exactly as it was very, very eye opening to me. And as it turns out, you know, I would actually rather sit in the uncomfortable body right now and allow it to be the forgiveness opportunity that it means for me, that it allows me to practice, than to have some kind of costume or shape or something to present to the world while all of the distress and pain kind of hang out in the back of the mind, unobserved, unnoticed, not allowed to be here, just because I'm using something else to cover it up. So it's just, I love this course. There are times when I don't. There have been times I've wanted to throw the tablet across the wall because that's where I pretty much read the course, you know, on my tablet. But those are just the times, I guess, when some of that shadow work is difficult, but boy, am I grateful for it. So, anyway, it's the top of the hour, and I really thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Karen. I appreciate all the stuff that you had contributed, and thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dana. I appreciate you so much as well. And I'm just really grateful that you're here with us. Because, I mean, you really add to our total ambiance, the way the group is. So I love it. And I appreciate you very much. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. And